Anger is something every human being experiences. It is part of our nature. Wisdom lies not in pretending that anger does not exist, but in learning how to manage it. Many people believe that strong individuals never get angry. But in reality, strong individuals are those who know how to restrain themselves when anger appears. The first lesson we must understand is that not every situation requires a reaction. Many of our problems come not from what people do to us, but from how we respond to what they do. Someone may say something hurtful, disrespectful, or unfair. At that moment, you are presented with a choice: either react emotionally or respond thoughtfully. The pause between the action and your response is where your power lies. When anger rises, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself a simple question: will my reaction improve the situation or worsen it? In most cases, anger leads to regret, not solutions. Silence at the right time can be more powerful than 1,000 words spoken in rage. And the second lesson is not to personalize everything. Many people speak and act from their own pain, ignorance, or frustration. Their behavior is often a reflection of their internal struggles, not a measure of your worth. When you realize this, you stop carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. You become emotionally lighter. See, another important principle is lowering expectations of people. When we expect perfection from human beings, we set ourselves up for disappointment. People will make mistakes. They will misunderstand you. They will sometimes be unfair. Accepting this reality helps protect your heart from unnecessary anger. We must also train ourselves to choose our battles wisely. Not every argument is worth winning. Not every insult deserves an explanation. Sometimes walking away is not weakness, it is intelligence. Your peace is far more valuable than proving a point. Munda education of the soul is just as important as education of the mind. Regular self-reflection, patience, and forgiveness strengthen emotional discipline. Forgiveness, in particular, is not about excusing wrong behavior. It is about freeing yourself from the prison of resentment. Holding on to anger harms you far more than the person who caused it. Remember that life is short and precious. Do not allow temporary moments or careless words to steal your long-term peace. When you focus on purpose, growth, and gratitude, the noise of people fades into the background. You become calm not because the world is calm, but because your heart is trained to remain steady. Brent's conclusion: never getting angry does not mean never feeling anger. It means mastering yourself. And when you master yourself, no one else can control you. Anger is a natural human emotion that arises in response to perceived threat, injustice, frustration, or pain. It is important to understand that anger itself is not inherently negative or sinful. Rather, it is an emotional signal indicating that something within or around us feels wrong. From a psychological and ethical perspective, anger serves as a protective mechanism. It alerts us to boundaries being crossed, values being violated, or needs being unmet. The challenge, however, is that many people misunderstand anger by treating it either as something to suppress completely or something to express freely without restraint. Both extremes lead to harm. One of the key problems with anger is not its presence, but its mismanagement. When anger is left unchecked, it can override logic, wisdom, and moral judgment. At that point, a person may say words they do not mean, make decisions they later regret, or damage relationships that took years to build. This is why education about anger must begin with recognizing it as an emotion that requires discipline, not denial. Suppressing anger can lead to emotional buildup, stress, and resentment, while uncontrolled expression can result in conflict, violence, and guilt. Understanding anger also requires recognizing its triggers. Anger rarely appears without a cause. It may be triggered by disrespect, unmet expectations, criticism, comparison, or feelings of helplessness. Often, the visible trigger is not the true root. For example, a small comment may provoke a strong reaction because it touches an unresolved insecurity or past wound. By identifying these triggers, A person gains insight into their emotional landscape and can begin addressing the deeper causes rather than reacting to surface level events. Another important aspect of understanding anger is distinguishing between feeling angry and acting angrily. Feeling anger is involuntary. It arises automatically. Acting on anger is a choice. This distinction is crucial for emotional maturity. A person is not judged by the emotion that enters the heart, but by the behavior that follows it. Education in emotional intelligence teaches that self-control does not mean the absence of emotion, but the ability to regulate behavior despite strong feelings. Anger also tends to distort perception. When a person is angry, the mind narrows its focus, often exaggerating faults and minimizing positives. This cognitive distortion makes situations appear worse than they truly are. As a result, the person may believe their reaction is justified, even when it is excessive. Understanding this psychological effect helps a person step back and question their emotional narrative instead of blindly trusting it. Another misconception about anger is associating it with strength. Many people believe that expressing anger loudly or aggressively demonstrates power. In reality, uncontrolled anger often reflects inner weakness, lack of patience, and poor self-regulation. True strength lies in the ability to remain calm under pressure. This understanding shifts the goal from eliminating anger to mastering oneself. Anger can also become habitual if not addressed. When a person repeatedly reacts with anger, the brain begins to treat it as a default response. Over time, this can shape personality, making irritability and harshness seem normal. Breaking this pattern requires awareness and deliberate effort. Education about anger teaches that emotions are trainable. The mind can be conditioned toward calmness, just as it can be conditioned toward aggression. Understanding anger requires acknowledging its consequences. Chronic anger affects mental health, physical health, and social relationships. It increases stress, raises blood pressure, and weakens trust between people. When individuals understand the long-term cost of unmanaged anger, they become more motivated to approach it with wisdom and restraint rather than impulse. And self-awareness is the foundation of emotional control. Without it, a person lives in a constant state of reaction, allowing external events and other people's behavior to dictate their inner state. When self-awareness is present, emotions are no longer enemies to fight or forces to obey blindly. They become signals to observe and understand. Control does not begin when anger explodes, but much earlier, at the moment a feeling is first noticed. Recognizing the early signs of irritation, tension, or discomfort gives a person the opportunity to intervene before the emotion escalates. Many people become angry not because of the situation itself, but because they are unaware of what is happening inside them. Physical signs such as a faster heartbeat, tightened jaw, shallow breathing, or a restless mind often appear before anger becomes visible. Self-awareness trains a person to notice these signs and treat them as warnings rather than instructions to react. This internal observation creates a gap between feeling and action, and within that gap lies the ability to choose a wiser response. Being reflections plays a central role in developing self-awareness. When a person reflects on past experiences, patterns begin to emerge. Certain people, topics, or environments may consistently trigger emotional reactions. By identifying these patterns, a person stops being surprised by their own anger. Instead of saying, "I don't know why I reacted like that," they begin to understand the emotional roots behind their behavior. This understanding reduces self-blame and replaces it with responsibility and growth. Another important dimension of self-awareness is recognizing personal expectations. Many emotional reactions are driven by unspoken assumptions about how others should behave. When reality fails to match these expectations, frustration arises. Self-awareness allows a person to question whether those expectations are realistic or fair. This internal questioning weakens the power of anger because the individual realizes that disappointment often comes from internal demands rather than external wrongdoing. Pausing is a practical tool that strengthens self-awareness. A pause does not mean avoidance or suppression. It means creating space for clarity. When a person deliberately delays their response, even by a few seconds, the emotional intensity begins to decrease. During this pause, self-awareness asks simple but powerful questions. What am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this way? What will happen if I react immediately? These questions shift control from emotion to reason. Self-awareness also includes recognizing personal vulnerabilities. Everyone has emotional weak points shaped by past experiences, trauma, or insecurity. When these areas are touched, reactions become stronger than the situation demands. Understanding one's vulnerabilities does not make a person weak, it makes them prepared. Instead of being caught off guard, they learn to protect themselves with patience and restraint. Another aspect of self-awareness, is accepting responsibility for one's emotional state. It is easy to say, they made me angry, but this mindset places control in the hands of others. Self-aware individuals understand that while others may trigger emotions, they are responsible for how those emotions are handled. This shift in mindset is empowering. It transforms a person from a victim of circumstances into an active manager of their inner world. Mendy's developing self-awareness is an ongoing process, not a one-time achievement. It requires consistent self-checking, honesty, and humility. At times, it may reveal uncomfortable truths about one's pride, impatience, or sensitivity. However, this discomfort is a sign of growth. The more a person understands themselves, the less they are shaken by others. Over time, reactions become calmer, responses become measured, and emotional control becomes a natural habit rather than a forced effort. Dan's detachment from people's words and actions is not about becoming cold, indifferent, or emotionally disconnected. It is about understanding that not everything spoken or done by others deserves access to your inner peace. Many individuals live in a constant state of emotional disturbance because they give excessive importance to opinions, comments, and behaviors that have little real impact on their life or values. When a person learns detachment, they stop allowing external noise to control their emotional state. One of the main reasons people become easily bothered is the desire for validation. When self-worth depends heavily on how others perceive or treat us, every comment becomes powerful. Praise lifts the heart excessively, while criticism wounds deeply. Detachment begins when a person anchors their sense of worth internally rather than externally. When approval is no longer the foundation of confidence, insults lose their sting and criticism becomes easier to evaluate calmly. Sabellian, another critical element of detachment is understanding intention versus impact. Many hurtful statements are not driven by malice, but by ignorance, stress, or emotional immaturity. People often speak without thinking, projecting their frustrations onto others. When this reality is understood, a person stops assuming that every negative comment is a deliberate attack. This shift in perspective softens emotional reactions and prevents unnecessary anger. Gene detachment also requires the ability to separate facts from interpretations. What someone says or does is a fact. The meaning we assign to it is an interpretation. Most emotional pain comes from interpretation rather than reality. For example, a short reply may be interpreted as disrespect, or silence may be interpreted as rejection. Detachment trains the mind to question these interpretations instead of accepting them immediately as truth. This reduces emotional overreaction and promotes clarity. Silence is a powerful form of detachment. Not responding does not always mean agreement or weakness. It often means choosing peace over conflict. Many arguments escalate because individuals feel the need to defend themselves instantly. Detachment allows a person to step back and ask whether a response is truly necessary. In many cases, silence protects dignity and prevents regret. Another important aspect of detachment is accepting that people are different. They think differently, communicate differently, and handle emotions differently. Expecting others to behave according to one's own standards leads to constant frustration. Detachment comes from accepting human diversity without trying to control it. When people are allowed to be who they are, their behavior becomes less personal and less emotionally disruptive. Boundaries play a key role in healthy detachment. Detachment does not mean tolerating disrespect or harmful behavior. It means deciding how much access others have to your emotional space. Setting boundaries allows a person to remain kind without being vulnerable to emotional harm. When boundaries are clear, people's actions lose the power to deeply disturb inner balance. Next, detachment also involves recognizing what is beyond one's control. A person cannot control others' opinions, moods, or actions, but they can control their response. When energy is no longer wasted on trying to change people, it is redirected toward personal growth and peace. This mindset reduces anger because it removes the expectation that others must behave in a certain way for one to remain calm. Detachment strengthens emotional independence. When a person is emotionally independent, they remain stable regardless of praise or criticism. Their peace comes from within, not from circumstances. This does not mean they do not care. It means they care wisely. By practicing detachment, a person learns to observe rather than absorb negativity, allowing them to move through life with calmness and resilience. Then spiritual and ethical discipline forms a protective framework that helps regulate emotions and prevent anger from dominating behavior. While emotional control can be approached through psychology alone, discipline rooted in values gives it depth, consistency, and long-term strength. When a person operates with a clear moral compass, reactions are guided not by impulse, but by principle. This internal guidance acts as a shield against emotional instability. Mentor patience is one of the most powerful disciplines in managing anger. Patience does not mean passive acceptance of wrongdoing. It means delaying reaction until clarity and wisdom are present. When patience is practiced regularly, the mind learns to tolerate discomfort without immediate emotional release. This tolerance weakens anger's intensity over time. A patient person understands that time often reveals truths that emotion hides, and that restraint today prevents regret tomorrow. Man, forgiveness is another essential ethical discipline. Many people believe forgiveness benefits the offender, but in reality, it primarily frees the one who forgives. Holding on to resentment keeps the mind trapped in past events, replaying pain repeatedly. Forgiveness breaks this cycle. It does not deny harm or erase accountability. It simply releases the emotional grip that anger maintains. Through forgiveness, emotional energy is redirected from bitterness to healing. Gratitude plays a significant role in emotional balance. A person who regularly reflects on what they have is less likely to be disturbed by what they lack or lose. Gratitude shifts focus from offense to perspective. So, when the mind is trained to recognize blessings, it becomes less reactive to minor inconveniences or careless words. This disciplined focus strengthens emotional resilience and reduces irritability. Regular self-accountability strengthens ethical discipline. When a person evaluates their own behavior honestly, they become more aware of their shortcomings. This awareness increases humility, making it easier to overlook the faults of others. A person who recognizes their own imperfections is less likely to react harshly to the mistakes of people around them. Self-accountability